Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Context. I'm Shannon Williams. I'm joined by my co-founder at Obot, Darren Shepard, and we've got an excellent session for you today. Aditya is joining us from Walmart and is going to share a little bit about their journey with MCP servers, and I am very much looking forward to it. I think it's going to be an awesome presentation. Before we get into that, just a little bit of housekeeping. The AAIF has now published all of the videos and information from the Dev Summit we hosted back in New York 3 weeks ago. So if you haven't had a chance to go out and take a look at some of the presentations, there are some fantastic presentations, lots of great content there. And they've also been announcing a number of other sessions. We have about 8 MCP Dev Summits coming up later this year. So if you go to the AAIF website and click on events, you'll see the next 2 are coming up in India. We've got one in Bangalore in mid-June, and then the next week there's one in Mumbai. So we've got 2 events coming up in India before hitting, I want to say, Korea, Beijing, Japan, Toronto, and that will kind of take us all the way up to the Amsterdam Summit coming up in September, which will be the first Agent Con / MCP Con. So lots going on, and lots of opportunities to speak, lots of opportunities to attend, lots of opportunities to get involved and meet people. So definitely go to the AIF. If you're not already a member, join and take a look at some of the events and think about getting involved in them. The sessions from that are all up on our new YouTube page, the Agentic AI-Foundation YouTube channel. It's our old MCP Dev Summit, just kind of renamed. But if you take a look there, you can catch all of these great talks and quite a bit on sort of where MCP is, where it's going, loads of case studies, and a really, really rich set of presentations about security. I would say that was probably the most heavily submitted talks track at the last conference, just tons of them. So should be a lot of good conversations and a lot of good content to listen to and learn. With that, though, I'm super excited to introduce Aditya Mulik, who is with Walmart Global Tech. Aditya is joining us from the Virginia area. And Aditya, thanks so much for being here today. We're really excited to hear a little bit about your journey with MCP at Walmart and kind of how you guys are approaching it. I know you're doing some really novel things.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me over here, Shannon and Darren. I'll go ahead. Hi everyone. I'll go ahead with the presentation as well. So thanks for sharing in the screen. Let me switch my screen. Okay, so the topic that I'm presenting over here is production MCP security from proof of concept to enterprise deployment, right? So if I go to the next page, so here you can see MCP, building MCP is pretty easy. In the screenshot, you can see you can just kind of write few lines of codes, and you can just see that it runs perfectly locally, and it's an impressive proof of concept for demos. Many people just demo it out very easily. But what if when we go to production, right? What breaks in production? Not often that we consider there are multiple things that can kind of go wrong, and we need to make sure that hardening system is a must, right? So some of the points that I noted is if there's no authentication, no authorization, if there's no observability enabled, no input validation, no resilience, no rate limiting, and no audit trail. Like you see over here, there are multiple things. Anyone who can authenticate to the MCP tool and they can just right away start accessing. Observability also makes sense. If you don't have this enabled, and if there's something going wrong, you won't be sure what's going on in production. And so on, same thing, the resiliency is a very important thing, and there are multiple other things that should be taken into consideration, right? So I'll go to the next slide. So I'm giving over here a real production incident. This is a case study which is very commonly known. It's all out in news as well. Like cleaning up old data is basically a user is prompting over here stating clean up old test data from the database, right? That's a very basic prompt, and user is expecting from the AI, which will be connecting to some tool, MCP tool or any other tool as well, and it just assumes that okay, I just need to clear out the test data. But LLM can interpret anything from it. It can just kind of see what tools are available and it would be like, oh, we have users table over there, let me just clean out the data from like maybe whatever timestamp that it assumes. And then what you see over here is around 10K production user records are deleted, customer data is lost, and this can have like a significant financial impact. And if there are no backups or if there's no data that's available readily, that could cause like potential loss for an organization. So what is the missing infrastructure layer over here, right? Because if there is something that from demos to production, if you want to get into, there should be something that you should have into consideration. One is like resiliency, availability, scalability, all the distributed systems concept. Coming from a security perspective, that the MCP servers should always have like, sensitive data has to be maintained with compliance. It should be a platform mindset. Like I come from a platforms background, and I make sure like, if anything that we are getting deployed, there should be a common platform where all these features from resiliency, availability, and scalability should all be available on that platform. Coming to observability, anything happens in production, right? Maybe today you're serving 10 users, maybe tomorrow you're serving around like 100K users. There should be visibility into what's happening, like who's accessing what tools. All that should be kind of like evident to engineers or the support folks, right? So that should be something that should be enabled. So coming to the next part, what's needed between users and MCP servers, right? Because a user and a developer can just like plug in a MCP server, but just having that connection is not enough. So this is a very common architecture pattern followed by almost Fortune 500 companies, or even like companies who are actually very serious about getting a gateway involved in between the MCP ecosystem. So here you can see the MCP gateway is a kind of like a layer between the client and the servers. And that layer kind of handles all the authentication, authorization, resiliency, observability, which I mentioned earlier. So that's something that's very important, right? In this architecture overview, again, as I mentioned, authentication and authorization can be like OAuth 2.1. That's like the industry standard. JW token validation. RBAC policy definition. RBAC is role-based access, basically each user having a specific role, and the role that defines what tools or services that they can access. Apart from that, there are like resiliency features as well, like circuit breakers for MCP servers. I'll be demoing this in the further slides. There should be rate limiting, there should be retry logics, and observability. Very basic ones is monitoring, logging, traceability. These are the three mandatory things I feel should be available in observability. So going ahead, now that we see that, okay, even if we add all these layers, right, but does it actually work when, does it work when things break? Because production systems will still fail. Like, one common thing in tech is CAP, which is CAP theorem. Network partition is very common. So server could crash, the network could slow down, traffic spikes unexpectedly. There could be a surge of traffic. There's some event that's happening, and then there might be multiple users coming in accessing the tools or servers. And very common one is attackers probe for weaknesses, right? Because like any system is kind of bound to attacks, which can be like SQL injection, prompt injection, and so on. So all these things can break the system. So what I'm proposing over here is a demo, like how to make sure, like even if there are failures, we can ensure that even in the failure situation, we should be able to handle the system very in a robust manner. Like there should be resiliency. So what I've mentioned over here is the question isn't if failures happen. The question is, does your system survive them, which is very important. So what I'm going to demo over here is I'll be deliberately breaking the system and showing you what are the resiliency patterns. So the first one, it's mostly on the RBAC policies itself and authentication. This is kind of like a pre-check to make sure like, your MCP server is only accessible to the people who are supposed to access it. So let me quickly switch to the demo. So what I did is I have created an open source repo. I can just quickly give a glance over here. I will be sharing the link in the slide as well. I have created the dashboard, the gateway, and the MCP servers, which I showed in the architecture diagram. In this entire architecture, the only thing that I can say is right now, I can get the server up and running. So this is kind of like a quick run. You can use Docker image to just quickly run it up. I have this docker run.sh file. So what I can do is I can just quickly run that. Let me get the server up. So I have like a up command only over here. So that up command should actually get the services up and running. And here you can see in the Docker containers, I think this might take a while. Let me quickly see if I can get this up and running. So I think in the meantime that I can confirm, right? If I go back to the slides, just to confirm over here, the architecture that I'm building is I have created a dashboard for visibility from observability perspective. I have a gateway which kind of controls these MCP servers. New MCP servers could be onboarded. Right now, I'm going to demo a 3 MCP server, but eventually there could be 50 or maybe hundreds of MCP servers that can kind of onboard to the a common registry. So going back. Yeah. So okay, I think I might have some issue with this, but okay. I what I've done is I've also recorded the session as well because at times there are like network latency. Let me quickly pick it up over here. Let me open this demo. Okay, so here in this demo, I've kind of covered the entire perspective. So as I was showing, I've created the DDoS script, and there are multiple other things as well which are covered in it. So from the configs, I've kind of created the OAuth server. There is a policy chain. There are policies defined over here, which you can see. And then in the policies, like eventually there's resiliency, which is circuit breaker, retry policies. All of that is kind of covered in the gateway. There are MCP servers. I have like server A, server B, which has each of this have their own individual tools. So these tools are more of like dedicated to that server itself, and so on. The next thing is this is I think the overall server which is connected via the HTTP bridge. Then I have the Docker images. I have all the configurations. I think yeah, this should run the service. Okay, so this shows the Docker images that are getting spinned up from MCP gateway to MCP dashboard and so on. This is the UI that I've built in. So I'm going to log in with the admin. So the admin is the one that's having access to the entire MCP tool. Here you'll see that the health and discovery is showing what are the servers, MCP servers that are up, which servers have access to which tools. There are metrics where we can see rate limit and etc., circuit breakers, and so on. And this is the activity log. This is more of the logging where how many requests are going through and all. So now the next thing that I'll be doing is I'll be opening the Postman. So let me, yep. Policies and authentication is what I'm covering. So here in the Postman, I've created all the configurations right in this. So in this run, what I'll be doing is I'll initially like generate an auth token, which is to log in with the email and username. I think my auth token is already stored there, so it will still work. But what I'm going to do is ideally we need the auth token and we have to set it as a bearer token. We get an access token. This bearer token is supposed to be set in the configuration, like we can consider at the UI level, which kind of gets passed automatically. Now that we save it, and if I now this is the analyst. So analyst has access to generate report, and the analyst can just kind of go and analyst at company.com, right? So the analyst should be able to access the tool over here as shown, which is generate report, right? So if I try to access the generate report tool, I'll be able to access it. It gives a 200 success and all the responses also coming back, which is all fine. But what if now I try to access DevOps? Like, is the analyst supposed to deploy an app? The deploy application is supposed to be with DevOps itself. So here you can see like I'm gonna click I'm gonna run this API and run the deploy API or restart API, any of it, and this will come with an RBAC violation. This is where I've kind of made sure 403 forbidden error is coming up, and it says like I cannot access that tool. And for visibility, I also have it like logged in where I made 2 requests which were successful, one which was blocked. To get granular approach, I can see it in the logs. Here I can see like analyst at company.com was trying to deploy the application and that person got blocked with an RBAC violation, which is 403 unforbidden, right? So that would be like the RBAC policy that should be there in place. Now, same thing. If I try to query database and all, I think it should still not work. But yeah. Okay, now I think I will be moving on to the next one. Yeah, you can see that this is another example, like RBAC violation. It is set at the server levels.
Aditya, just to stop you for a second, this demo you're showing us here, is this something that you guys are running inside of Walmart?
No, this is more of my open source implementation, Shannon, which I've tried. So I've kind of built it with like vibe coding, and ideally, I'm just kind of mimicking the approach, like how we do it, like in production setting, just to make sure, like like that kind of can scale up.
So this is inside, like on the work side, you built something similar, or you're sort of
I mean,
managing.
over there we have like proprietary tools, so we don't kind of rely more on it. Like so we usually have like either we partner with vendors, or whether it's like our own tools as well, which are built in. So it depends on use case to use case basis.
I see. Okay, so this is what you're showing us right now is something that you're using to. Is this an open source project that you've already made available, or are you launching this open source project? Like, what's the status of it?
I actually created this project from scratch, and
Okay,
yeah, I just built it from scratch using vibe coding, and I just got it deployed. Like I just running it locally.
I see. Okay, cool. Well, I just wanted to make sure I understood the context. All right, thanks.
No problem. And then the next one is I'll be demoing another one, so I'll do it in this video itself. So the second demo is like the server crash and circuit breaker activation. So what my perspective is, a server, like the network partition is pretty common. An MCP server can go down. But if there are requests, a burst of traffic still coming in, and if the server is not able to respond, there could be cascading failures. And to handle this cascading failures, I've introduced the circuit breaker over here. So in this case, as I show you, I'm going to show the metrics first. The circuit breaker are all closed at the moment. All the servers are like, up and running in my Docker image. But now I'll be running a shell script in my chaos engineering. I'm just going to call the server crash.sh. So what it will do is it will actually have requests incoming. It will kill the server, like get the server down, which is team A, and then the circuit breaker gets opened up. See, you all can see the circuit breaker got opened up because team A server is down. Now, what we ensure over here is like circuit breaker opens up. That means no more requests are like handled. Here, I'm just returning an error. In real production environment, there could be a fallback service where the request could be forwarded ahead. So this shows like circuit breaker is still active, and then I'll just get the server back up. As you see, server is back up now. And now the request, like the circuit breaker should get closed again, because since now the server is back up, now it's again able to respond back with success, and the blocked requests are now avoided. So this is kind of gracefully handling the situation where something goes wrong. At least we are able to make sure. Yeah, here you see like there's restart delay, there is a container that was killed, the circuit breaker got opened up. It was half open once it was recovering, and then it was completely open, which got basically to closed. And from metrics, we see 124 requests blocked. Over here also, you'll see there are like success, which were like recent ones. All 503s are the ones which are blocked, which is circuit breaker got opened up. So any user who's trying to access, ideally 503 is the situation that should be coming in. And yeah, that's how it's handled. Now, next one is the DDoS attack. So let me just quickly pause over here. So DDoS attack is basically like, again, a security vulnerability, right? Because if some team is trying, or some person is trying to kind of infiltrate the service, and they're trying to kind of send a huge load of requests. Maybe I have a server which maybe with 8 core CPU and maybe 16 gig RAM, and it's only able to handle maybe 120 TPS. I'm giving an example over here as a 120 TPS, but if it's able to handle 120 TPS, and if there's a burst of traffic coming in, if it's a DDoS script, or even if there's a surge of traffic, we should be rate limiting the request. So in this case, I'll be throttling the request coming in. So if I'll see this, I have the next script which I'll be running right now, which is the DDoS. So initially 100 requests will be going through in a normal fashion, and then there will be a burst of traffic. So until 100, things are fine. It's all successful. This is like in a common production environment situation where requests are coming in. Even if they are at a parallel level, right? If it's a parallel call, it will still proceed at a 120 TPS threshold. But once there is a burst of event, you can see 429 rate limits. And on the rate limit screen as well, you can see over here, things are getting rate limited. Some of the requests are still passing through because the TPS will only handle that many requests, but the rest will get throttled. And here you can see like if there's a DDoS happening, a rate limit 429 is the best way to kind of handle the burst of traffic. And here you can see the total duration, like successful, failed, and there's a total request, like 5,000 requests were sent. That achieved TPS was 291, but my target TPS, anything above 120 will get throttled, is what I have defined, and so on. And basically from the dashboard as well, we'll be able to see 120 TPS per user is enforced, these many requests throttled. And here you can see like around 3,000 requests were blocked. Here you can see all the 429s, everything was rate limit exceeded. There would be some still available which will go through, which are less than 120 TPS. So that's how it's controlled. Yeah, I think that's about it for the demo. Let me quickly go back to the slides. So I demoed RBAC policies, I demoed server crash and circuit breaker activation, I demoed DDoS attacks and controlling by throttling. So these are the three major demos. Now, what are the summary based on these demos, right? The importance of authentication and authorization is very important. It's very crucial in any organization to have a basic set of authentication and authorization. Some like even if we rely on LLM to kind of like take a call, but LLM can have can get hallucinated, or it might not know the context, and it can take any sort of action. So if the users who are accessing a tool, they can, whatever prompt they give, they should be giving the correct one itself. And we should be limiting what tool access per person should have, or a user should have, should be defined. Next thing is network partition control. Network failures are unavoidable because that's something that we can't control much over here. So in this case, server avoid getting overwhelmed. One circuit breaker, it can get turned on. So that should be the main thing. Another thing is controlling the request to the MCP servers. As I mentioned, rate limiting is a very big prerequisite. If whatever is the threshold that you can tolerate is the only request that you can get in, and that makes sure your server is healthy, and it can all together avoid cascading failures. There could be multiple other servers that could get impacted as well. So in this pattern, we kind of control the entire thing. Now coming back, as I mentioned, this is the open source repository which I created. A lot of vibe coding. I am open to like more collaboration if people are interested to get it more robust, try more scripts and so on. So that's something I've mentioned over here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Aditya. I'm curious, this is a project that you sort of started and have been working on. When did you begin building this, and what are you hoping to happen with this open source project?
So I just started 2 weeks ago. What I've seen as a common demo, right, because I have been involved in a lot of open source contributions as well. The only thing that I see right now is many people are coming with MCP servers, like some tools or something, but there are not many production-ready tools, which are easily kind of available. Or if they want to try some circuit breaker pattern, or they want to understand maybe adding like a rate limiter. All these things are all production-ready services. So if they want to give it a try, or they want to incorporate in your own tool, nowadays there are many packages also available where you can just plug in like a circuit breaker can be enabled, or rate limiter can be enabled. But it's kind of like building up from the ground up. So that's what I've created in this repo.
Who do you think the ideal user is then? Like, is it a developer who wants to test their MCP server? Is that kind of who you expect to use this?
Yeah, developers, even testers, if we actually, right now I didn't add any agentic flows over here. It can be expanded with agentic flows, or having LLM introduced in it. So if they want to make sure if the MCP calls are like very secure, or if it's kind of like in a if they want to make sure how the policies are going to impact which tool is how, so the developer can kind of get an idea how they want to set it up in their own project. So they can just extend it out. That's the thing, because fast MCP will give you most of the things, but to what I added is more of a production layer.
And how can people find this? Is it already public? Is it on the internet or not yet?
It's already public. I think I have the link as well, but yeah, it's I've shared it on the in the YouTube link as well in the description.
Okay, great.
So I was really curious, like how are you guys using MCP at Walmart? Like, what has been the use cases, or what teams have adopted it, or what do you have in production, or things like that? Yeah.
Yeah, so ideally there are like multiple teams building a lot of MCP servers, and it can be anything varying from like any like Walmart specific e-commerce, or like in anything in the retail fashion that they want to. There are multiple teams building, but right now we are in the nascent stage where we are kind of like exploring a lot. It's not
Mhm.
actually production, because we are like we focus mainly on like like getting things into production, but not actually like something on the POC side. So I have not been involved much on that area.
So it's because you're giving the example of like deleting things from production, like that thing. Was that just were you saying like that was a scenario you actually like encountered in your own company, or just pointing to other people on the internet of
Yeah,
kind
I've
of
read about it. So it's more of my research where I've kind of like figured out like there are things where people have kind of not had the compliance, or like the governance set up. Because if there's no governance, right, and if people are just readily giving access to tools, I don't remember, there was an article basically which mentioned that they just kind of got rid of a lot of data in production, and that kind of impacted for a long downtime, because if there are no backups set up, right, so that's a huge impact. And if LLMs are taking the call, so that's the concern.
So, like in terms of the efforts that you have like going on, because you're saying you're kind of in the nascent stages, is like what's the driving factor of like why people are even looking at MCP as opposed to because there's competing approaches. Like, why would teams be building MCP servers right now? What's the choice to do that?
Mainly getting to the agentic flows itself, like making everything automations right now these days. Agentic flows, like if we are using Claude or something, like it makes it much convenient also, and for us to kind of save time, save money is what we are kind of focused on. So that's how we kind of envision to have these tools and everything like onboarded.
Roughly, how many MCPs do you think are sort of being used today inside of Walmart?
I think in my team, I'm not very sure, because there is a very huge abstraction layer over there, because we just have access to certain tools what we deploy. But there would be multiple, because there are many teams kind of working on multiple MCP servers, and there's an entire huge team. So yeah, I'm not very sure, but yeah, I think it should be around like what we use is like 2 to 3 servers at the moment.
That's your team. In which area are you guys focused on?
We are more on the store sites itself, like whatever stores related, like like whether it's kind of an in-store or anything as such is what we focus on.
So in that ecosystem, I mean, are you imagining that there are MCP servers, or maybe MCP servers powered by agents in front of them, that would end up working with store employees or with store shoppers? Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it could be anything, as in like people who are kind of like shopping online or shopping in person, whatever the possibilities that come through, like from a digital framework. That's where we are kind of trying to envision and bring it in the stores itself. So there are multiple use cases, but it's very granular level how we are planning it, like and it's all in nascent stages. We are not taking any quick actions, but it's going at a slow pace.
Awesome. Darren, any other questions you had?
That's cool.
Aditya, thank you so much for joining us today, and congrats on working on this project. It looks like you've got something you've developed. But I hope you get some users and people can check it out and see if it maybe can help them in their journey of building MCP servers. So,
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll be back again next week with interesting talks about MCP servers and AI. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.